So yes, the evaluator's field manual. Let's begin. So this is the content of what I want to share with you now. First of all, I wanted to introduce another method. So Bart has already introduced to us the burger method or the sandwich method. I'm going to introduce another method. And I want to talk about some conflicting forces that we are subjected to when we do an evaluation in Toastmasters, or any evaluation for that matter. And then we will begin what we can do to maximize our chances of doing the best evaluation we possibly can. And this is at different time periods. So we're going to look at what you do before the meeting, what you do at the meeting, what you do during the speech, after the speech, some delivery tips, and then just some closing points. So that's what I'm going to share with you. First of all, has anyone heard of the pie method before? Okay, I just wanted to say, there was something that you mentioned this morning, Bart, that burgers are always the answer. I have to say, if you don't feel like having a burger, you can always go for a pie. So, the pie method. It is an acronym. P stands for praise, instruct, encourage. So, this is basically taking the foundations, which comes from the burger method or the sandwich method, and it's applying these new words attached to each layer. And what this does is it calibrates the kind of feedback that or the kind of points that you want to raise in each part of your evaluation. So you start with praise, you move on to instruction, how they can improve things, and then you move on to what happens if they do improve those things with the praise that they have already achieved. What can they look forward to in the future, or something like that? And this allows us to calibrate our sandwich or our burger so that it is even more tasty for the speaker to hear and for the audience. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about each point a little bit later on. So I just wanted at this point to introduce the pie method. Now, as an evaluator, we are faced with conflicting forces. Have you ever met people who have a certain opinion where they say things like, I'm a straight up guy, I tell it like it is. I don't sugarcoat it. And they might say, most people don't like it, but that's their problem. You have these kind of personality people. And then on the other side of the scale, you have other people who say, come on, we're here to have fun. It's not really that serious. We don't have to go too far with our criticism. And I think the old school way of thinking, at least, would put the left-hand side, which is the straight up, honest, no sugarcoating point of view, as the strong opinion. But I disagree with that, because it is always a balance. What is wrong with this personality where they say, I tell it like it is? It has a lot of shortcomings. For example, they are not appreciative of the level of effort that goes into a speech or anything that they're evaluating. So it's important to remember all of the positive things. So you do have to be positive as well. So in that way, you could just as easily say the people who conserve their relationships, the people who remember to be respectful and grateful and positive, you could equally argue that they have the stronger side of the argument. But in actual fact, of course, it's a balance. Of course, you do want to be honest, but that doesn't give you a free card and not be tactful with how you deliver that honesty. So in the end, it's important to be honest, but it's also important to be appreciative. And so this is just one example of the many conflicting forces that are at play when we try to evaluate somebody. Right, the field manual. How can we prepare for our evaluation? Well, before the meeting, this is where your investigation begins. This is where you have to find out all that you can. Specifically, number one, what are you evaluating? What's the project? What are the objectives of that project? Find the evaluation form, read it, see what the project is all about. And today we have a very special guest, Keemthin, who is attending and is going to give us a speech live. Keemthin, have I got your name? Is that how you pronounce your name, first of all?
Yes, it's Keemthin. Thank you.
Keemthin,
yes.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining. Keemthin is going to give a speech to us after our next break. And because it's a live speech, we can straight away put this field manual to practice. So, Keemthin, as I understand, you are doing a project with Toastmasters with the speech. Is that correct?
Actually, the goal was to give a speech, and I found a project for it.
You found a project for it.
But
great.
That's how it works.
Okay, great. And which project are you using?
It's an elective on level 3.
Yes.
And it's called Understanding Vocal Variety.
Right, vocal variety. Thank you very much. Okay, so first of all, we know the project. It's about vocal variety. We know it's a level 3 project, so we know that he has some experience with public speaking, of course. But on top of that, we happen to already know that Keemthin is actually a distinguished Toastmaster. Is that right, Keemthin?
Yes, you're right.
Yes, okay. So we know that he has quite a lot of experience. Not to put pressure on him, of course, but these are the things that we look at when we are doing our background investigation for our evaluation. So, vocal variety is today's project. Now, as you may know, there are a lot of different projects at Toastmasters, from an icebreaker through to researching and presenting, through to motivating, through, there's so many different projects, and each one, as an evaluator, you want to prepare what you think is most important in this project. So if you haven't done a vocal variety project before, then it will involve some Googling or some research about what exactly is vocal variety. Because at first glance, you might think this is just changing your vocal cords, making a bit of loud, a bit of quiet maybe. And that might be what you believe vocal variety is. But if you really look into it, you might find that there's a lot more to vocal variety. It's not just about volume, it's not just about pitch, but there's also maybe sound effects, maybe there's pauses, the effective use of pauses, right? There's pace of speech. How fast is he speaking? He goes fast, he goes quiet. This is all the variety that we can include in our brainstorming to prepare what we want to listen out for. Another thing that we can do before our meeting begins is check the administration. So we've had a little talk with Keemthin. We know what the project is. What we can do now is look online and make sure that the administration checks out. Sometimes you might find that the speaker has accidentally submitted the speech request for a different project or a different date. And this is a good time to check just to make sure, because maybe he forgot, maybe he's actually doing another presentation. He was thinking about a different one. You never know. So this is why it's good, in my opinion, to check your administration, make sure that everything checks out. And with this information, we can start our brainstorming. So we've already had a little talk about what is vocal variety exactly. And at this point, you can start to think, if I was doing this project, what would I do? What would make this project successful, in my opinion? You can start to think about what would be a good subject. So for example, if you were doing the project research and present, it might not need to include as much storytelling, but if you're talking about vocal variety, maybe storytelling is more suitable, because then you can start to get into the characters in your story and you can really start to use variety in your voice and your pace and your pauses, everything. So you can start to brainstorm. Investigate your speaker a little bit. We've already done this a little bit here already. So we know what level they're at, what ambitions they might have. So these are the kind of things that we can also ask our speaker. So let's check in with Keemthin. Keemthin, do you have any special ambitions for this project or in general that you're aiming towards with this project?
Yes, the idea is that I'm participating in the club contests, and what I would like the audience to focus is on the use of the camera, because let's say sometimes my hands appear too big in the screen, and that are typical things which I would like to have feedback on, and the ambition is to be better in that field.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we know that he is looking to enter into a contest. So this already helps us with our calibration of our evaluation. If he's entering a contest, what this means is, as an evaluator, we want to find all the low-hanging fruit for how to improve his speech so that he can put in a minimum effort and get maximum gains from this performance today. And this is in contrast to if he was already, let's say he is finishing a pathway, for example, or he's just reaching a milestone. In that case, we don't necessarily need to focus on exactly what he can improve exactly. We may be looking at more what he's already achieved. So this helps you to calibrate exactly how your evaluation, what it's going to focus on. So contest, he wants to improve his camera, or make sure his camera is good, at least make sure there's nothing weird about how his hand and his head fit inside the screen and that kind of thing, because this is important with online performing. So that's why we check in with our speaker. Okay, next step. Situation, circumstances. Okay, so this is kind of the same thing. What is the situation of the speech? What are the circumstances? Does he have any requests? Basically, I think we've done that. Okay, so with this information, again, we can brainstorm. How would we do it if we wanted to achieve these things that he wants to achieve? We might want to prepare in advance where exactly we're going to be shooting, for example. It's just brainstorming to make sure that the background is good, make sure the camera quality is good, you know, this kind of thing. It's just brainstorming what you would do to try and achieve these things. Right, so why do you do this brainstorming? I think one of the main reasons for me at least, is there's only so much you can really observe in a speech. And so you need to be looking at the right things. And what I do in an evaluation is I will have several pieces of paper and a pen. And what I have is, on my main piece of paper, I divide it into different categories. And in each category, we'll have a heading, such as pauses, such as vocal variety, volume, this kind of thing. So that if I hear something during his speech that I want to record, I put it into the corresponding column, and this helps me with my thoughts. It helps me record efficiently. And so at this point, you can start to think, what categories might you want to use? So for example, if it was a research and present, then you might be more interested in the content of the speech, the structure of the speech. Make sure it checks out logically. Whereas if it was a vocal variety one, you want those other headings that we talked about, pauses, volume, etc., etc. And so this is your background investigation that helps you prepare for your evaluation. A big disclaimer here is, if we go into too much detail about our speaker's history, it becomes a risk that you might start to evaluate the career of your speaker, which is not what you want to do. You don't want to evaluate their history, and Bart's already mentioned this in his presentation. You are evaluating the speech, not the person. So it is important to drive a wedge here and make sure we don't go down the wrong track and start to evaluate their career. Right, so we've done a bit of research, and now is the day of the speech. What's the first thing you can do? Bring your evaluation form, or talk with your speaker, ask them if they are going to bring it. Bring it yourself. It's easy. Bring paper, bring pen. Arrive early. Why do you need to arrive early? Because you want to check in with your speaker. Why do you want to check in with your speaker? You want to confirm that they're doing this project, that they haven't changed. You want to ask if they have any different requests or final requests. Or you might just learn some interesting circumstances. Maybe their house just burnt down. This is important because this would show certain characteristics about them. They showed up even though they had a lot going on in their life. These are just little things that you can pick up as an evaluator. So you talk with your speaker and you just observe. Are they anxious? Are they excited? This helps you calibrate your evaluation a little bit more too. Another thing, check where the speaker's sitting in the room, if it isn't a physical meeting, of course. Choose a seat. Right, so you know where your speaker is going to be sitting. Now it's important to know, where would you like to sit? And why is it important? Because it's not imperative, but if you have a seat where you have a good view of the room and a good view of your speaker, it's going to allow you to observe things more easily. That's all. Prepare your note-taking categories. Sorry, I'm one back. So this is what we talked about before. So you need to design exactly what kind of layout you want on your piece of paper in front of you, so that it is as efficient as possible for you to record your observations while writing down the least number of words, because the more time you spend writing, the less time you spend looking at your speaker. And you need to maximize the time you speak, or you listen to the speaker, sorry, because then you can observe more. And finally, again, this is not imperative, but it's just another little thing that you can think about, is observing your speaker throughout the meeting. Do they have to do a table topic right before their speech that might have jumbled up their thought pattern or something like that? These are just little things that can help you understand the situation in which you are evaluating. So, during the speech, so you're sitting there and you've got your piece of paper with the categories that you think are important. You've got another spare piece of paper for miscellaneous note-taking outside of your categories. And the speaker is about to speak. And this is where the real skills come out to play as an evaluator, because it's important to record everything that you can notice that you think is important or might be important. Record it efficiently, but also listen to everything that you see and observe. Note down your observations as per your categories, or not. Be prepared to change your categories depending on what you see. So this is the skill of making decisions on the fly. How do you want to record these notes? And do so in the most efficient way possible. Most important thing when you're listening for notes, you're listening for observations. You have to look for several positives, and that's really important. Don't forget finding the positives. You have to find the gold. And there's always a lot of gold. This is a thing. And it's a mindset for an evaluator. As you practice it, you get better at looking for the gold as well. You can look for skills. Are they demonstrating any special skills that you're impressed by? Did they do something innovative, creative in their structure or their delivery? There's a lot of these categories. Attitude. Are they committed to their development, and so they're putting themselves into uncomfortable situations, just as per the growth mindset that Bart's already talked about? Is the subject really interesting or useful? Did they do an in-depth analysis and they're really seeking the truth on a matter here? These are all things that are positives that may be useful to record during the evaluation, might be useful to bring up during your evaluation. Are they funny? Are they good jokes? Was it genuine humor? Was the project that they're undertaking and the subject that they chose, was the subject suitable for their project? Was it a really good selection of a subject? Did they prepare really well? Or obviously, did they prepare to a point where they didn't need any notes or that kind of thing? Yeah, so there's a lot of ways that you can look for the gold, but always look for the gold. It's really important. Okay, so now during the speech, you're just observing everything you can. After the speech, or during and after the speech, both, you're trying to find the instructs, which is the I part of the pie. So you have to ask yourself, if this was my speech, or if I was somehow responsible for this being as successful as possible, what would I work on, honestly, to make it better? And why would I work on that? Why would it help? Specifically, what is the benefit of improving those things? So you've got improving the speech, and then you've got improving the skills of the speaker. If I wanted to improve the skills that the speaker wants to improve, what would I do? And finally, you need to try to develop your encouragements for the PIE method. And the encouragements you could think are very similar to the positives, and they are very similar. But the encouragement part of the evaluation is more focusing on what's next. Why should this speaker follow through on those I things that you mentioned, on those instruct points? Why? How useful are those skills that you're talking about? And finally, you can also add some encouraging comments to say, is this speech competition worthy maybe? And in this case, he is going to enter a competition, so in that case it works out. But if it wasn't if he wasn't preparing for a competition, you might want to suggest it. Encourage them to enter this speech into a competition. They might just win, you know, they might go much further than they ever thought. And even if they don't, it's an encouragement. A lot of the time in our club and Toastmasters, I always really do look forward to the next speech that each member is going to give, because it is genuinely interesting to see, to hear them speak in general, let alone to see the development of them. And it's great. This is a good encouraging, it's honest and it's encouraging. So it's important to note that and bring it up in your evaluation. So you've got the P's, the I's, you got the E's of your pie. And there is some overlap between the P's and the E's, but the E's tend to focus on the future and they focus on the bigger picture. Whereas the P's, the praises at the start, are mainly focusing on what we have to be grateful for right now. So it's like a snapshot of all of the things that we should be grateful for and appreciate. The speaker should and the club should. And the E's are more big picture. Where is this all heading? To make sure that they stay encouraged to stay on the path and keep pushing themselves. Okay, so after the speech, we've got a list of notes. We've organized them by category. We've designed some P's, some I's, and some E's. Now we can start to think, what do we want to include in this evaluation? So this is where the filtering happens. Do we want 2 P's, 2 I's? Do we want to focus on the encouragements? And this will, you might want to decide based on the situation, the scenario. In this case, we're preparing for a speech contest. So we really want to probably focus on the I's and the E's to make sure. Of course, this is up to you as the evaluator. So how do you decide exactly? You think circumstances, the speaker's requests. Is the speaker a beginner, expert? And was this performance, in your opinion, was it a really good performance, or do you think that they probably could have done better? Were you expecting a little bit more, maybe? And this will help you decide what you want to include in your evaluation. Did they just achieve a milestone? Did they have some additional challenges? These are the things that will help you decide how many P's, I's, and E's. Additional challenges might include anything from he had to work a 60-hour week last week, or this kind of thing. And so you might not know these things, but if you check in with your speaker and you try and find these little things, bits and pieces, that helps you calibrate your evaluation. The mood, feeling, were they anxious? Were they scared? Were they excited? Their level of preparation and their comfort zone. So these are the things that help you filter out your notes. And of course, you have your opinion of your notes as well. What would the speaker benefit from hearing most? Did you observe something particularly interesting that you really want to raise? In that case, put it in. And remember, these ratios, they don't necessarily make it harsh or lenient. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about what we're focusing on, whether we're focusing on all the good things that are already there, whether we're focusing on how to make it just that little bit better with minimal input, or are we focusing on making sure that this person sticks to their pathway and makes progress over the next months? So it's not necessarily a harsh or lenient thing. It's just a calibration. Okay. So you've filtered out all of your notes, and you've decided what you want to include in your evaluation. Some tips for your delivery. First of all, don't forget, when you are invited to speak at Toastmasters, we thank the Toastmaster, or in this case, the general evaluator. We greet our club. We say good evening. This is something that is often forgotten, so don't forget. Speak to the audience. Don't speak to your speaker. This is another thing. When evaluators often do their evaluation, they say, Keemthin, I really enjoyed your speech. XYZ, you did this, XYZ. But come on, you're in front of an audience. You have to speak to the audience. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Toastmasters and guests. Tonight we witnessed an impressive speech, etc., etc. So you're speaking in the third person. You're speaking to your audience. You're not speaking to your speaker. Be authentic. So this means you don't have to worry about putting on a special character. You don't have to worry about being pressured to have all of the right answers, because you don't have all of the answers. It's just your evaluation with your opinion. So you don't have to pretend like this is the gospel. It's just an evaluation. Don't put pressure on yourself too much, just a little bit. So don't worry about it, is what I'm saying. Just be yourself. Now, we all want your attention. As audience members, we all want your attention. And that's just another way of saying speak to your audience. Something that I think is really useful when you're doing an evaluation is to start at altitude with all of your points and drill into the detail. So I have an example. I was evaluating once and I said, what I appreciated most, so this is in the evaluation, I said, what I really enjoyed about this speech was her use of hand gestures. And then it's like, well, what do you mean? You get excited about hand gestures. That's not that relevant. So you start at altitude. Instead, you say, somehow she managed to keep us engaged for her whole speech. How did she do that, ladies and gentlemen? I think it was through the use of cleverly implemented stage presence, specifically her hand gestures. And so this helps the audience come with you on your thought process rather than just arrive straight at your destination and say, oh, your hand gestures were good. Because it's not about the hand gestures, it's about the audience engagement or interaction, etc., etc. So you start at altitude and you drill into the detail. Try to give examples of every point you make. And this is something to remember when you're taking notes. So when you're taking notes during the speaker's speech, try to include the exact examples that you actually, where you got that opinion from. Because if you just write down an opinion, you're going to have a hard time later on giving the example of that opinion, which devalues your opinion, basically. If you have an example of every single point you make, then you've got hard, concrete evidence of why you're saying what you're saying, and that's important. If you can, as well, you can demonstrate the improvements that you are recommending. And this is pretty difficult to do in some cases, but it will really make your evaluation strong if you can do that. So what it means is, say, for example, someone's giving a speech and you're evaluating them and they say something like, let's say they have a story and there's a moment in the story where they are upset. But when they're saying that story, they have a smile on their face or they're moving around the stage and it's not connected to their speech. What you can, when you suggest an improvement, say, instead of speaking loudly when with a big smile, you slow down your speech. This is a sad moment in the speech, so you talk slowly. That's just one example. But if you can demonstrate if you can demonstrate exactly how they can implement what you're trying to tell them to do, that will really improve your credibility of your evaluation. Okay, another point is to be humble. So what that means is sometimes when an evaluator talks, they'll say, you did this, the whole time you were doing that. But it would be better if you just put a caveat in there. I thought my interpretation was, I didn't understand this part of the speech, instead of saying, we didn't understand this part of the speech, because you're not speaking for the club, you're just speaking for yourself. And so it's better to appreciate the fact that this is just your opinion, and don't make a big deal out of things. So maybe they were looking down the whole time, but you don't need to necessarily say it, because what value would it add to say, oh, it was exactly the whole time. It was the whole time you were looking down. That doesn't add any value to it. You can just say, I noticed you a few times you were looking down. You're still getting the value of the speech, but you don't have to put the speaker, you don't have to rub it in. Like this is going back to that other point about balance. You can tell the truth, but it doesn't give you a green card to go and, be arrogant. And be aware that everybody has different opinions. So this became obvious to me in our club, and I think all of your clubs are probably the same. You have a little square piece of paper, and everybody can write down little bits of feedback. So basically, yeah. So everybody is basically an evaluator in that case, to some extent. So what you can do as a speaker in that case is tabulate all of the notes you found from those little square pieces of paper, and you can compare that with the general consensus of your evaluation. And I've found that in the past, sometimes they don't necessarily agree with each other. And so that just goes to show that it really is just an opinion. And sometimes it is not perfectly aligned with the opinion of the general audience. So everybody has a different opinion. Okay, so using your eyes as an evaluator. This is something that is quite, in my opinion, quite advanced to have the level of skill where you can direct your eyes depending on exactly what kind or what part of your evaluation you're in. So generally, as we already have established, you are evaluating to your whole audience. So that means that you share your eye contact with everybody. But if you want, if you're giving the compliment, like the praise, this can actually be directed directly to your speaker on occasion in the right way. So what this means is, it's basically saying that the improvement points are not for the speaker. The improvement points are for the club to appreciate and learn as a club. But the praise points, they are really for the speaker, because the speaker did that, and the speaker deserves maybe a little bit of recognition for it. And so when you're giving praise and compliment, you can be looking directly at your speaker, but when you're giving points for improvement, it's for everybody to learn from. So when you do your instruct points, I think it's important to consider the real value, like what is the result of why you think that this is important to work on. So I have an example. Let's say this person was looking down and not looking at his or her notes. Or sorry, let's say that he or she was looking at her notes or looking down and not addressing the audience. So the real value is, instead of saying something like you ought to have better eye contact, that's assuming like you don't know why you'd have better eye contact. So you go to the real value. The real value is having the ability to really engage and interact with your audience. And if you're relying on your notes, or you are unable to use eye contact effectively, then you're limiting your ability to engage optimally. And so the gain is really, you can improve your ability to engage by not looking at your notes. So instead, that's what I mean by looking at the real value in the result rather than the issue itself. Yeah, okay. So the last point is the summarize. I think it's, if you want to put a really strong finish to your evaluation, it's really important to summarize all of your takeaway points. So you say the things that were good plus the things that we can improve on will equal a fantastic speech. And so this just neatly ties everything up together to say this is basically the whole thing. This is your conclusion. Summarize all of your points and your takeaway message. That's basically it. And I think that this will really make your evaluations strong. So after the evaluation, you've still got that evaluation form. You want to fill it in. And again, you want to be positive and you want to be practical. So you're helping them to improve. You have these grades from 1 to 5. If it's a beginner speaker, you're not going to give them all 1s. Or if it's a professional speaker, you're not just going to give them all 5s because there's no value in that. So you calibrate it to the level of the speaker, in your opinion. And this highlights areas where you think were good and areas where you think could improve. So that's what this is for. And so that's why we calibrate it. Try to add as many comments as you can. So on the right-hand side of the evaluation form, you've got comments. Try to add as many as you can. But don't make stuff up. So if you don't have a point, you can leave it blank, but try to make a point. I think that's a better way. Okay, so now we're after the speech. The speaker's spoken, you've done your evaluation, it's the end of the meeting. You want to check in with your speaker. First question I think you really want to ask is, how do you feel? Like, how did it go? What do you think? How do you feel about the whole thing? How did your speech go? Was anything in the evaluation confusing? Or do you think that I had the wrong impression? Maybe I didn't, maybe I misunderstood the speech. Maybe there was a joke and I didn't get it and everyone else got it. That's happened before to me. Yeah, I might have misunderstood something. I may have missed something. It's possible. You got distracted and you were thinking about a certain point, and then at that point, the speaker had some critical part of the speech and you missed it. Check in with your speaker. What would have made this evaluation better? Ask the speaker and think about it yourself. And then the cycle continues. So the cycle, I mean the development cycle of your skill in evaluation and also the speaker. So just some final points on reciprocity, influence, and progress. In general, from my understanding of life, people listen to those who listen. So people who are only willing to give criticism or give feedback, even if it's positive, they have less influence ultimately than the people who will take on board criticism. So to build your influence, you need to take feedback as well, because it's a two-way street. The best relationships are reciprocal. Never one person here and one person here. It doesn't really, that's not in a relationship, that's a hierarchy. And so to build really strong relationships, they need to be reciprocal, which means you take on board things. And this comes back to the last point when you're checking in with your speaker. What could I have done better? In that case, he's evaluating your evaluation. And so it's a two-way street. And finally, something that has sort of caught me a little bit in the past is the ups and downs. So I might have given an evaluation, I thought it was good, And then I'm thinking, great, I think I've got it now. I'm a good evaluator. And then the next time I go on and give an evaluation and it's not that good. That's what happens. That's life. And I have had exactly the same thing. I've been doing a lot of running training recently over the last 2 years. And I would go out for a run and one day I'd be like, wow, I've gotten so much better. I'm this good now. I used to be this good. Now I'm this good. Exactly. And then the next time I go out, can't do it. And that's life. You know, you go up and down. And so you look at this, this is the stock market. It goes up and down. It's always going to go up and down. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to do well. You're going to do badly. This is life. Just expect it to go up and down. But over the long run, you'll see a very clear improvement line. So don't be too upset about what's happening in the here and now. You're on the pathway and you're on the right one. Practice. That's the final one. Well, that's what makes the pathway, I guess. As long as you're practicing, you're getting better. As long as you're doing it thoughtfully and you're following the field manual, you'll be on that pathway. That's the end of my workshop, my field manual. So I hope it was useful for you. If there are any questions, would anyone like to ask anything?
I have a point. I have 2 points where I would like to draw aspects of both of you. The first one is should evaluation be a speech in itself? And the second one is since we have switched to virtual meetings now, how much do you think somebody's style of evaluation or the way we think affects over a virtual meeting? Well, what are your thoughts? Both of you.
Great question. Bart, do you want to have a first go at it? You're muted at the moment.
You're still muted.
I promise that I don't do anything. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm now unmuted. Shasidar, can you please repeat it because it was too much information? Sorry.
Okay, I'll make it concise. The first one is, well, what are your thoughts on an evaluation being a speech? Not just evaluation, but it's a speech in itself. And the second one is the impact of virtual meetings on evaluations.
Okay, well, I think evaluation is not a speech, but it has the kind of content that the speech also has. Only the thing is that it is 2-3 minutes, so it's more compact. And the idea of the evaluation is that you present improvements that the person can grow and is open for this growth. So you're a kind of coaching, and that is a different thing than when you are presenting. Presenting, you want to give advice or be a kind of expert. So that is different than a presentation. And the second part, I think that the workshop that we both gives inside information, what to look at and how to present your evaluations, and be aware what the impact can be. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Bart.
I have one point to add as well, is that I have been tempted in the past to make my evaluation as attractive as possible for the audience. And I have a little bit of a caveat to that. I found that it's not necessarily the objective to steal the show as an evaluator. Because remember, you're talking about the speech and the speaker. So if you try and steal the show, it could come across as in some cases a little bit arrogant, because you're stealing the show, basically. You're forgetting that you're actually evaluating someone else's speech. It's not about you, it's about the speech and the speaker's development. And so to that point, yeah, I would make it attractive, of course, but don't steal the show as an evaluator. For the virtual question, that's a good question. Do we need to adjust our approach for a virtual speech and a virtual evaluation? I would say that the bare bones of the methodology would stay much the same, but there may be differences, and I can't say I have a strong opinion on how they might be different. So initially I would just use the same approach and then take on information as we get practice. That's all I can probably recommend to that. Does that answer your question, Shashi?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, both of you, for your thoughts.
Any more questions?
Well, I have one.
Yes.
I'm having a little bit of an issue because, in the sense that I am basically giving an evaluation to an individual because on their speech, but I have to speak to the audience. So why would I engage the audience to get them to go with me? Because at the end of the day, it is my perspective on it, right?
Yes. But
so why am I engaging the audience? Because then I am kind of saying, you know, audience, this is my point of view, and I need you to go along with me. But at the end of the day, everybody has their own point of view, because I'm evaluating it from my point of view. So to me, it feels a little bit disrespectful towards the speaker, because especially when I do the I part in your pie, that is the piece where you're like, where can you do things better? And then I'm like, and I'm telling the whole audience, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So how can I deal with this then? Because I don't really understand, why should I give my personal opinion towards the whole audience to hear? I don't get it.
So I think the evaluation is just your opinion.
Right.
But you're explaining why this is your opinion. And so you can, I think I understand your question.
I hope so.
Yeah. So yeah, my take on it is that it shouldn't be uncomfortable for you to present your opinions about a speech and to present your thoughts, your ways in which you would improve the speech to an audience.
But I'm not uncomfortable, excuse me, I'm not uncomfortable with presenting my point of view, but it feels a little bit disrespectful towards this person giving the speech that I am sharing my personal opinion with the whole audience. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, and maybe it's because I have more Zoom meeting experience than personal experience, because I've only just joined. So most of it's been online, and I am so used to getting the feedback kind of one-on-one, even though everybody's, joining. And there is not a possibility afterwards to say, hey, how did I do? Yeah, sure, maybe you could WhatsApp the person, but to me, it would be like, wait, so I am your evaluator, and I took time to evaluate you, but then I need to share my opinion with the whole audience. Just how do I deal with it so that it doesn't feel discomfortable for me? Because it does. Get you going. You've got till 12. Then we've got 9.
But do you want to have a response to it? Do you have any comments?
Well, what I heard is that she was not feeling comfortable with speaking to the audience. Was that what I heard, or was that not true?
No, I don't have an issue speaking to the audience, but I do feel it's a little bit disrespectful towards the speaker because I'm evaluating the speaker. So why not
Okay.
speak to the speaker directly? Why am I engaging the whole audience with my perspective on the speech?
Yeah, well, what the thing that I can say, if you put it directly to the person that you're looking in the eyes and not and only looking at him, and there is not so much distance. So it could mean that he will not be open to receive it. And if you put it more in general on stage, without then the person can decide for himself what to do with it.
Okay.
And that's the most important way, I think, to grow and not to get in a defense position. So I think there it's all about.
But you can agree with me, Bart, that there are a few people who cannot really take criticism that well. And they're like, why is she looking around the audience when this should be just towards me? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there was a comment in our chat as well that raises a really good point, and that is that the audience members, they can benefit from your observations.
Okay.
So you're giving these observations to show the club some of the things that you might want to think about, and it is just your opinion.
Right.
But these are the things that, if it was you, maybe you would consider looking at these things for these reasons. And so it's not in any way arrogant. It's or out of place for you to give your opinion to everybody, because again, you're not giving your opinion of the speaker. You're giving your opinion of the speech, and also you're calibrating it. So it's not just about the things that could improve. It's also, what do you have to be grateful for? You're sharing the joy with the club as well.
Right.
And so it's a balanced evaluation.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Good one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I have another question. I'm wondering if you have any tips how to improve your active listening skills, because you have a very short period of time in which you should observe everything. And I noticed myself that I have sometimes problems with it, because I think I have to think about this, I have to think about that. Is there any structure or something that could help with that?
Bart, do you want to answer that?
Well, I don't have the right answer, but what I noticed from myself is that if you do it many times, you get more easy and comfortable. It is maybe a stupid thing, but driving with a car. At first, you're looking at everything, but you're not going into the deep. But now when I'm driving a car, I can even feel how the wheel is balanced. But in the beginning, I did not have any idea where to look at. So just go with the flow. That's the thing that I can say. Observe in your own way and pinpoint some things that into detail that is possible to improve. But it's impossible to look at everything.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
And I have one addition to that is, this is what the background research helps with before the speech, because there you're filtering out what you think will be important to listen for. And so then you're not relying on just figuring it all out within those few minutes of the speech. You've actually prepared a few things that you think are the most important, and that will help you, observe the right things, because you're right, you can only observe so many things. Until you get really good, of course, and then that grows exponentially. When people are really experienced, they can notice much more things, as Bart just said. So yeah, hope that helps.
Thank you.
Any more questions?